Hey folks, we made the mistakes and learned the lessons so that you don't have to. Here's what we learned about choosing livestock for successful small farm operations based on our 10 years of experience doing so. We've raised quail, broilers, layers, ducks, sheep, pigs, and now cattle on our small farm. And I can tell you, the order and the timing of when to introduce species is important. It matters. Today, I'll show you how to match livestock to your specific property. Not just follow someone else's path here on YouTube, because what works for us might not work for you. It might be completely different for your context. Let's get into it. The big mistake. So, here's the mistake almost everyone makes starting out, and that's with what's trending or what your favorite YouTuber is promoting. If you want Highland cattle right now, you're probably in that boat. You're following what is trendy. Everybody has to start somewhere. For us, it was quail. We saw all these videos about how quail were perfect for small spaces, fast production, minimal movements, quick turnaround on your investment, and honestly, they seemed easy. Small birds, small spaces, and if we messed up, the financial losses were minimal, next to nothing. I found some quail on sale for Craigslist, and we jumped on it. We jumped in. And you know what? We learned pretty quickly that we hated keeping animals in cages. On top of that, eggs were tiny. And while quail taught us some basics, they didn't align with our goals. Here's the key point I want you to remember. Species selection should be driven by your resources, not someone else's success story, but your goals. Just because it works for them doesn't mean it'll work for you. All right, so how do you actually choose? I'm going to give you a decision matrix with 4 key factors to consider. Number 1, land. Do you have pastures, or do you have brush, or a mixture of both? How about woodlands? Because different animals, different species, thrive in different conditions and different environments. Number 2, infrastructure. What fencing do you have? What shelters are available to you? What's your water system like? Because you need to match your animals with those resources that you have available. Number 3, time and labor capacity. Some animals need daily attention, others can go a few days, and you can set up systems that automate for certain species. So you need to be honest with what you can commit to. And number 4, your market goals. Are you just focused on feeding your family on a homestead level, or are you trying to turn this into a business of like a farm income? Those decisions can change everything. So let's break each of those 4 factors down, and we'll tie in some examples from our journey specifically. If your property is overgrown with brush and brambles, start with goats or pigs. Goats are browsers. They prefer brush over grass. They're excellent land clearers, they're hardy, and they're dual purpose. If you want meat or milk, you can have both with goats. The downside, they are escape artists. They have that reputation for a reason. You need good fencing, or you'll be chasing them down the road. Pigs, on the other hand, they're a great option for brush as well. They root, they'll clear land, and they'll turn unusable land into something manageable. It helps to run the chainsaw to knock down the brush to get it to pig's height, to help quicken those transitions. And then once you've got the brush knocked back, the grasses will start to establish themselves naturally. You can seed it to help with that progression. And then that will allow you to progress to sheep. Sheep are mixed grazers. They'll take some brush, but they really prefer the pasture forbs and grasses. The sequence works because goats and pigs create the condition for the sheep to thrive. And eventually, once you've got real pasture established, you can then consider other animals like cows, for example. But remember the saying, sheep will thrive where cattle will die. If your land can't support a sheep, it definitely cannot support cows. Now, if you already have good pasture, start with poultry and maybe a couple of sheep. Poultry have a low barrier to entry. They're not expensive. They'll help you build your skills, and they have the benefit of depositing nutrients right back into your pasture, into your soil for future species to benefit from. For our journey, we went with quail, in cages and quickly transitioned to broilers out on pasture, and then to layers, and then eventually we got comfortable free ranging our layers. Broilers are a good option because you have a 6 to 8 week turnaround for broilers. You get a really quick feedback loop to determine whether or not you're doing things correctly. You'll also get a sense of whether or not you enjoy raising chickens by running broilers. They're a perfect test run. Layers, they have ongoing management. They teach you daily routines, collecting eggs, checking waterers, and addressing any predator management issues you may have. We ran ours in a mobile coop, which gave us some flexibility for movement and different pasture management techniques. From there, progressed to sheep. Sheep are fantastic grass converters. They prefer pasture forbs and minimal brush. We use portable electric netting when we ran sheep, which gave us lots of flexibility with management and pasture management and animal management, moving animals to where the grass was growing best. Then you can progress over to cows and other exotic pasture species if you so desire. These are your highest capital investments and offer your best grass utilization. But here's the thing, use sheep to understand the infrastructure you'll need, because cows are actually easier to manage once you've learned on sheep, in our experience. So you may be wondering, why save cows for last? They do require a significant amount of infrastructure compared to some of the other options that we've already discussed, especially sheep. They also have a higher financial risk involved with their ownership. You can make a mistake with a chicken and you're out maybe like $20 or so. But if you make a mistake with a cow, you could be looking at $1,000 or multiple thousands of dollars in loss. The general rule with cows is minimum 2 acres per cow-calf pair, but that varies widely based on region. So talk to your local NRCS or conservation district employees to get a sense of where things are at in your location. Another great alternative to jumping into cow-calf pairs would be to buy in a few steers, similar to how broilers are a quick turnaround just to see if you like it. Buying in and finishing a couple of steers for yourself and family or friends is another option that you could pursue just to see if you like raising cows without having the long-term commitment. Quick note, if you have ponds, ducks or geese can be a solid choice. They can be fairly messy otherwise, but just a warning from what we've learned, while duck eggs are highly desirable by bakers and other consumers, we found in our market that duck meat is definitely not something that people are looking for. Fish is also another option. You could do it for recreation or to develop it into an income, depending on your setup and how involved you want to get. That's not something that we have pursued with our pond. Let's talk about infrastructure next. This is where dreams can meet reality. Poultry is very simple to get started from an infrastructure standpoint. You could buy in pens. What we choose to do, we build portable broiler pens here on my left, and we've also built the portable layer coop that you see on my right. They don't require a significant amount of daily upkeep because we designed all that into the system. The rule of thumb here is the more that you invest in infrastructure for your system, the less amount of time, if you do it right, the less amount of time that you will have to invest on a day-to-day basis. When you get into sheep and other ruminants, the infrastructure requirement steps up a good bit. For sheep, we started with portable electric netting, and you could also look into multi-strand electric wire. As far as shelter goes, that's another big jump in infrastructure requirement. We were fortunate to have a livestock barn here on property, but you could get away with something as simple as a 3-sided shed, or even just a natural windbreak with like a cluster of pine trees or something like that. As far as labor requirements for these animals, plan for about 30 minutes a day. with pasture moves and stuff like that. You might need a little bit more time on the weekends to set up like the week's worth of pastures, for making it easier if you're off farm to set up those pastures after work or things like that. And then also plan for more time during your lambing or calving season, whenever your animals are having their offspring. All right, pigs. Believe it or not, we ran pigs all summer in the woodlot behind you. It has recovered nicely. We like to give it a rest between batches. We don't run pigs every year just so that we don't destroy our farm, because they can be very intense. From an infrastructure standpoint, you need to be very cognizant of your infrastructure around pigs, especially your electric fencing. They will test it. They will root and throw soil up on your lower wires. So that's something that you need to check on at least a weekly basis. As far as shelters go for pigs, they don't need a lot of shelter, but what you do provide obviously needs to be very robust, because they will tend to break it just because they can be very destructive. The one thing that is an absolute must for pigs in the summer is some sort of wallow, because they need to roll around in that mud to provide a layer of protection on their backs from the sun and the heat. From a labor and time perspective, pigs do take a little bit more time. It's probably similar to cows or sheep with the moves. The difference there is that you are moving them, but you also need to feed them and water them on a regular basis. And that brings us to cows. Oh, right on cue. Cows and most other livestock, you want to make sure you have a pretty robust perimeter fence, because you want to make sure, first and foremost, you want to make sure they stay on your farm. To do that, you would want to have some sort of high tinsel or field fence. Those are the two most common in our area. And then for rotational grazing, we use step-in posts and poly braid wire with movable reels and a sturdy post to mount the reel to. That works great for us. But as you can see, that's just a single wire, and that's keeping all of our cows in. So it works great. The more robust perimeter fence is more for peace of mind. But keep in mind, these electric fences, regardless of what you choose, is more of a psychological barrier rather than a physical barrier. As far as shelter goes for cows, it's similar with sheep. They don't really need a shelter necessarily, but if you want to provide one, again, windbreaks are fine. A three-sided barn is also more than enough. But as you can see here, even just the shade of a tree row is more than enough for providing shelter from the elements for cows. Water requirements definitely increase with cows. You see that's probably in the neighborhood of 20-25 gallons there in front of our bull, but it fills up quickly. That's the smallest that I would go with for a small herd. If you get any larger of a herd, you would definitely want to increase that. But that would also work for a fairly decent sized flock of sheep as well. Time investment, again, similar to what we've already talked about with sheep. You're talking, maybe, for me, I've counted it, it's about 20 minutes to do a move for us in a day. And then certain moves, it might take a little bit longer. Hopefully by now you understand that selecting livestock is very much a transition based on the transition that you experience with the resource base that you're working with, pasture, woodlots, what have you. So one thing to keep in mind is you transition your infrastructure as you transition your species. It's best to try to start working on infrastructure for the next level of species before you actually go and buy it. For us, that wasn't necessarily the case. The barnyard fencing you see here behind me, I did not get that done until 6 months after we had already had the cows. It made for some very harebrained experiences with how we were doing our fencing in transition between sheep and cows, but definitely one of those lessons learned there for us is to try to get your infrastructure done before bringing in the next species. Along with that, you also want to match your infrastructure to your current species as best as possible. For example, if you know that you want to run cows or something to that effect and you need a perimeter fence, you don't necessarily need to be doing that right away if you're starting with chickens. So keep it realistic and make sure you build your cash flow with your earlier species before jumping into the expensive infrastructure costs of your species down the line. The next piece to discuss is time and skill, because not all livestock are created equal. So if you've got a lot of time, which most people probably don't these days, but from a time perspective, poultry is your higher time requirement. You've got to check for eggs, water, feed, predator management. It all adds up, but that learning curve is low because your livestock species is, from a financial perspective, minimal and fast. You learn very quickly because of the repetitive nature of doing those things. And then your losses are measured in dollars, not thousands of dollars like working with cows. The step up from there would be moderate time requirements, like I've mentioned, sheep and pigs. Again, your losses will increase with either of those species, and the time frame in which you learn the skill, because of the nature of the production cycle, you will learn those things much quicker. And then what we have found is, it feels like a little bit of a paradox, but cows, we find it's actually lower daily requirements, but it's higher in skill level, because you have to be able to identify, that a cow or a sheep, they're trying to hide the fact that they're not feeling well. You have to be able to pick up on those cues that the animal is giving you. And then on the pasture side, you need to be able to balance the livestock's need with the pasture availability that you have. So from a skill perspective, it gets more challenging as you climb the ladder. And then also from a skill perspective, with cows, the infrastructure requirements are significantly more. So when I set out, with chickens and quail all those years ago, I had some carpentry skills to bring, but I would not have been prepared to build a fence. Through time and learning, I developed the skills necessary to be able to build my own high tensile barnyard fence. All right, so economic goals. We're not doing this for free after all, right? If you're focused on self-sufficiency like we are, we have decided to prioritize dual purpose animals. For our layer flock here, we have enhanced Delawares. We can get meat and eggs out of those to fill our freezers. And another species that is fantastic for filling freezers would be pigs. But for us, layers provides daily nutrition in the form of eggs while we built our skills. Fresh eggs every morning, and they pay for their feed through sales to our customers. It's important to keep track of your cash flow. From a cash flow perspective, your fastest return on investment is going to be broilers. You're done in 6 to 8 weeks, and then the next best from a cash flow perspective would be pigs. You're done in 4 to 6 months, depending on how old the pigs are when you bring them in. And before you invest in anything with the intention of generating an income, make sure you do market research. Is there something in your area that it's hard, that people are having a hard time finding? What is your local demand? Those are the kinds of things to think about before taking an enterprise that you have on your farm and scaling it up to meet local demand from a business perspective. For us, we had significant demand from our customer base based on our other operations here. From selling eggs, broiler chickens, and then eventually lamb, that people were starting to ask us a lot for beef. So we are now at a position where we have a multi-year backlog essentially of demand for beef that we can't meet at this given point in time. And that was the primary driver for us getting into beef from the get-go. We saw a lot of demand from our customer base for that product. And going back to what I mentioned earlier, the Dexter cows that we have are also a dual purpose animal. Actually, some people say they're a tri-purpose animal, but for us, dual purpose. We can get milk out of them if we have the time to train one of our cows for being milked, and then of course we also get beef out of it. The third leg of that stool from a tri-purpose perspective would be a draft animal. And with how we started, the hybrid economic approach is, in our opinion, the best. We start by meeting our needs first, and then we add in a little bit of extra runway there to be able to sell some product to help recoup some of those costs. And once you figure out your systems, you can add numbers to grow the income side of the equation. So our journey was exactly that. We started small with quail and broilers, then we scaled up gradually as our infrastructure improved. And by scaling up, that allowed us to be able to offer products off farm and build a customer base. All right, so that's a lot of information. Here's a 5-step action plan to help you get started. 1, walk your property. Figure out what grows naturally on your property. Is it grass, brush, or trees? Get an idea of the percentages of each to give you an idea of how many head that you might be looking at wanting to get. And then budget. What can you afford to lose while you're learning? Because there will be losses. They won't be easy, but you have to start somewhere. So start with species that have a lower monetary value loss. Number 2, start small and strategic. If you have pasture, start with broilers. Just one batch is fine. Test the waters. Maybe you'll progress to layers before the season's over if you enjoy chickens. If you have brush, start with goats. If you enjoy goats, maybe you'll move on to pigs to help manage that brush. Build only the basic infrastructure you need. Don't overbuild for animals you don't have yet. And here's a critical rule. Never get just one head of any specific species. Livestock are herd or flock animals. They want to be with others of their kind. They need companionship. Get at least 2, 3 would be even better in the event of an untimely loss. Step 3, prove your system. Run a couple of production cycles through your system. Make sure that there's no issues. Track your time, your costs, and your yields honestly. Not what you hope they are, but what they actually are. And if you're selling, set your prices to your personal production costs, not whatever your local market is. Fix weak points before scaling. If your watering system is a daily headache, fix it before you add more animals. And monitor for vegetation changes. Are your sheep improving your pasture? Are your pigs clearing that brush like you had hoped? Let the land tell you if your system is working. Step 4. Now it's time for you to consider scaling or pivoting. Do you add your next species based on how your resource base has changed? If the goats have cleared that brush, or the pigs have helped set back some of that brush, now you're probably in a position to start growing some grass. Maybe it's time for some sheep. Improve your infrastructure for your current stock before adding more. More of the same is often better than more variety. It's easier to manage 50 chickens than 10 chickens, 3 pigs, 2 goats, and a cow. Step 5. Going back to a previous video that we have done, plan for droughts. Plan for personal illnesses, livestock health issues, or any other anomalies that may arise. Brainstorm solutions to those things. For an in-depth drought planning strategy, check out our video linked in the cards. Build community to help with unexpected happenings and build relationships with a vet for your livestock needs. Here's our key takeaway. Match your resource base that your land provides now to the livestock that you start with. That may not be necessarily where you want to end up, but that provides you with an opportunity for the livestock to do the work for you to get your land and your property to where you want to go. So with all this being said, what livestock are you considering? Leave a comment down below and let us know. Let us know how we can further help you to get started and get on your way. If you found this helpful, hit that subscribe button. Follow along with what we're doing here at Homestead Citadel. And my final thought before we go, the best livestock for your small acreage is the one that you're excited to do chores for, whether it's boiling hot or really cold. Because even in those temperature extremes, your animals are still going to need your help. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.